welcome to Along This Spiritual Journey. I am your spiritual tour guide, Jah. I'm so happy to be back. I took a couple months off, took a break for myself, but I am back with fresh new topics and things that I want to talk about. What we are starting today is a series I'm calling the ABCs of Spirituality. And so I thought this would be a fun way to break down a spiritual journey, at least in my experience, how I've experienced it, and just see if it might help somebody else. So the word that we're starting with for A is awakening. And I think this is one of those terms that gets used a lot and it doesn't really give much explanation. So I have my notes, so sometimes I'm going to look away to look at notes, but I'm just letting you guys know that everything is from me, is original, but at the same time, it's a lot to remember. So this segment, I'm going to do a little something different. Usually I kind of just talk to you guys off the top of my dome, but I wanted this to be a little bit more structured because I really started to recognize how we're going on these spiritual journeys, but it still gets a little diluted or misconstrued based on what we see in society as well as social media, right? A lot of people make you feel like it's just about meditation and dressing a certain way and acting a certain way and doing tarot and all these things. And trust me, I love tarot, but these are tools to help us understand our spiritual journey. And so first, let's try to define what the spiritual awakening is. For me, it is a state of awareness. It is a state of being, and it's about learning the reality of when you walk into a room and you start to recognize patterns. You start to recognize things beyond your own understanding, and you're like, okay, this is starting to seem familiar, or I've been here before, or why does this feel like I've done this, but I don't have the answer? These are parts of spiritual awareness that becomes the awakening. And so one of the things I wanted to talk about is how most awakening happening is through some level of a trigger. I used to feel like, why do things have to happen this way? Why can't it just come to us gracefully and easily? And it can, depending on how you integrate certain things into your life. But just how some things are, where you have to crack a shell, sometimes it's a little rough to get to the meat. You gotta really just crack it open to get to the good stuff. And sometimes it's like an egg, where it's just a simple fracture and it just opens, right? Each of our journeys are different in how that happens, but sometimes it's going to come through loss, it's going to come through heartbreak, it's going to happen through depression, some level of getting success and then something still feeling empty, right? These are all levels of awareness that as a human, we walk into this earthly world and we are taught and trained in a lot of different concepts, but we're not giving the proper tools still. And so, one second, bring it down a little bit. We're not given the proper tools and understanding what consciousness is. So we just walk through this world feeling like we don't know, we're supposed to just act like everyone else. But in reality, we're creating our own conscious state of reality. I know, that was redundant. But what I mean by that is every day you wake up and you choose a concept of idea, concept of belief, concept of doing, you're creating a reality that's either aiding to someone else's imagination of creation or it's aiding to your own imagination of creation, right? And so some of the things that are early signs of spiritual awakening, we have it listed here. Sometimes it's sudden sensitivity to energy. Out of nowhere, you're just feeling more. You don't know why you're feeling more. You feel more sensitive. You feel more in tune with other people's emotions. You feel like things just shouldn't be this way. That's an early sign of awakening because it's like the shell, or I always think of it like a cocoon or a chrysalis for a butterfly. It's like in that moment when you're in it, you're just in it. You're just morphing. The body's changing. The energy's changing. The DNA on some level is changing, right? But you're still encompassed in this shell and everything's happening to you until finally the energy is dispersed and it comes out of that shell and it becomes its new identity. So when we talk about disconnection from old relationships or old types of way of thinking and being, this is where we start to question who am I really? what am I doing here? We start getting deja vu, those synchronistic feelings. Some people talk about pattern recognition and numbers and seeing sequence numbers over and over and over. Those are ways that I feel that the universe tries to communicate with us. But an actual awakening, in my opinion, is when, again, your reality is shattered. In tarot, they call it the tower moment, where something that you thought was reality is no longer your reality because it's shifted. So here's a great story that I have from my past. This happened almost, I want to say, yeah, almost 20 years ago or about that. Um, I was at my place, my apartment, and I just got a new kitten. My friend, her cat had some kittens. They couldn't keep them all, so I took one. I did not get them their shots right away, which I should have. It's going to make sense in the story later. But at the time, it was a kitten. I just wanted to make sure they were safe and had a place to be. And I took them home, and everything was great. So fast forward, I was having a party at my apartment, and a bunch of people saw the cat and they loved the cat. They wanted to touch the cat. They wanted to pick the cat up. They wanted all to be in his face. And for the cat, it was only used to me. So it was a lot of energy for this little kitten to take in. So it was getting overwhelmed. It was getting annoyed. It was trying to hide. And instead of me just putting the cat to the side and letting it be, I chose to try to control the situation and hold the cat. And the cat was trying to get away. And I wasn't thinking about it because I was drinking and partying. And again, these are times when I was younger and I wasn't as conscious. I'm not saying that you can't be conscious and drink and stuff, but at this time, I didn't know. I was just a regular kid living my life thinking everything was based on TV and romance and what type of job I had and all this stuff. That stuff matters to the human world. It doesn't really matter in the spirituality world or the concept of spirituality. So when I started to hold the cat too tight and it was trying to get away, it bit me. It bit me right through my synovial joint, it was crazy that it just missed my bones, right? But it went right through the joints. And long story short, I got pastorilla. That's usually, they say, it can only come through cats and dogs, through the mouths, whatever, the ones who haven't been treated. So that's happened to me. So I'm thinking like, okay, whatever. So I put the cat away. I don't get too mad. I just put the cat away. And I'm like, okay, that was my fault. And I keep partying. The next day, my thumb is huge. It's so swollen. It's horrible. And I'm thinking like, okay, maybe it's not as bad as I think. And there was like pus coming out. And one of my coworkers was like, you need to go to the hospital. That's not good. And I'm like laughing because at the time, I wasn't really near any family. I only had the friends I made, or at least the friends I thought I had. And it just really started to awaken some things in me. Like, I went to the hospital thinking it was just going to be a couple hours. That couple hours turned into 7 days. Yes, 7 days. And this whole time, the first 3 days, I was so afraid. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was going to happen. The doctors and the nurses, they were trying to figure out what to do with me because they never, again, I guess, had an experience like mine where it was right through the joint. And then it was a pastorilla seeping through my blood and all this other stuff. And at one point, somebody came in, not even knowing me, not even knowing that I worked in healthcare, but they just really messed up my reality where they were like, oh, we might have to amputate. And that put me in a state of frenzy where I was like, no, you cannot amputate my thumb. This cannot be happening to me. No, this is just not my reality. And I, in this moment, remember, my mom's a nurse. Let me call my mom. And I called her crying like, Mom, oh my gosh, they want to amputate my thumb, da 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 da. And she's like, no. Get me the doctor. Get me somebody in charge. To this day, I don't know what my mom said, but I had a new doctor, new nurses, new medications, new everything. And after 7 days, the antibiotics worked and they let me go. And I tell this story because it was one of my first moments of awakening to spirituality, because I could have died. I could have literally lost a limb. But in that time, the people that I called friends, no one knew I was in the hospital. No one called. No one tried to check in. At the time, I didn't have my phone, so I wasn't able to let people know where I was. Only my job knew because I left in such a hurry. I did get my phone back eventually that week. But when I got my phone back, crickets. Not one person even knew I was gone for 7 days. And to me, that was so heartbreaking because I realized I had only created this delusional world of friends and family because we drank and partied and trauma bond. And I was living in this reality that wasn't mine. And I was forcing myself to be somewhere that I didn't want to be. And in that moment, that's what I realized, like, that's what I did to the cat. I was forcing them to be in an environment they didn't want to be in. And I forced them into survival mode where they had to bite me to get out of that space of uncomfortability. And so that was my trigger moment for me. That was what my awakening started as, where I'm like, got it. Reality is about awareness. It's about recognizing the patterns around you before something happens, before it leads up to something bad. If necessary, it can be good or bad. But the point is, when you are conscious, you have awareness. And when you have awareness, you start to notice patterns and how the universe is trying to speak to you. Remember, this is not woo-woo. We are flesh bags, right? We didn't choose our bodies. We didn't choose our consciousness. We were born into them. So we come into this earth with these bodies, with this consciousness, and these two things are always trying to communicate. But we've been taught to only listen to the body, and so we ignore the body, or we've been taught to only listen to our thoughts, and then we ignore the body, which is our emotions, and it's telling us, I've been through this experience before, I don't want to experience it again. And instead of listening to it, we force it into a situation it doesn't want to be in, and then we start to have reactions, we start to fall apart, or we start to see things in our life not work the way we want. This is the part of the awakening that most people miss because they're so focused on trying to find tools to help them through the journey. Remember, tools are important, they're essential. But when you're only focused on taking ayahuasca or just meditation or trying to think positive all the time, those are tools to help you get through these moments that you have no clarity. But they're not the actual awakening. The awakening is you recognizing that I do not have to participate in this reality that people create for me. I get to participate in the reality that I create for myself. And so when we do this, we want to prompt questions to ourselves. And one of the questions that I wrote down is, when you first started to feel off, right? And the world had you on its path, what path were you yearning to be on, right? Because at this point, now we're taking our own belief system and we're trying to see if it fits the world that we're currently in. If our own belief system doesn't fit the reality that we're in, that means that you're awakening into your conscious self. You're starting to recognize that, that's what the Matrix was all about. You can choose to continue to take the red pill and believe whatever is fed to you, or you can take the blue pill and wake up and you'll know everything and you'll see everything. But that doesn't mean that reality is going to work with you the way that you want it to. So you have to create your own path. Because one thing I have learned is when you create your own path, just like water flow, it's going to start to flow to you eventually. As long as there is a opening or space for something to flow there, the water will flow there. But if it's just blocked off and you're only using the route that was created there before you, then you're more than likely going to get the same ending that whoever created that route gave it. So that's why I say when you're choosing a path, let's say you want to be a doctor or you want to be an officer or whatever these things that you're choosing to be, are you doing it because you want to serve that title and that duty, or are you doing it because people around you told you that you should, right? Because we can do a lot of things that we were told we should do, but this is where the mind checks out. This is where the body checks out sometimes. This is when we can say we have the best job and the best life, but we're depressed because we did it for the status and the ego. We didn't do it for our actual purpose and enjoyment. That's where we have to start, again, asking yourself, what was I going to say? Like, when you hear someone ask you a question, the choice is yours on how you answer it. The detail you give or the things you omit are your choice, right? When we're having an awakening, the conscious self is giving you the same perspective where it's saying, I can give you as much as you can handle, or I can give you as much as you're ready to receive. but it's still going to be here for you to insert that into your own life when you're ready. Spirituality is not about trying to always be perfect or peaceful. It's about learning how to communicate with the unseen and the unheard and the unknown, right? That's spirituality to me, because there's always going to be a concept of, I always say, what do they call it? When you're pretending to be something that you're not, but really in reality, you are the embodiment of that thing. So you start to project your insecurities on not believing in yourself and not trusting your gut. And then when reality proves it to be true, you go back and then you beat yourself up and say, oh, I should have listened. I should have paid attention. That's just the moment of learning. That's the pattern. That's the part of saying, okay, I recognize the cycle. I don't have to repeat it again. Now I can just go and implement this new thing I learned, put this block there. It's not going to collapse now because I made a foundation for it, and I can continue forth on my journey. So the part of any journey is about letting go. You can hold on as long as you need, but once it's time to let go, let go. Because when we start to not reflect on what we've experienced, then we start to live other people's perspectives. And that's the part that stifles the awakening. The awakening itself, again, is not to say that I'm so woke and I'm so right and no one else can tell me differently. No, you don't want a spiritual bypass. You don't want to become so cocky and condescending that you don't trust other people's experience. But what you do want to say is, I am open enough to say what I am experiencing and what I am learning is something that others might want to implement too. So let me just share it. That's the part of consciousness. When we talk about a collective conscious and being able to have a world where everyone can get along, I mean, that would be perfect, right? We would love that. But the reality is, there are some people where their vibration is still at a place where they have not cracked the shell of their current reality. And so for them, they're going to live in this virtual reality world that was augmented for them. And they will not question it because it's going to feel so real because they're participating in it, right? People have to forget, things feel real because you participate in it. If you are an insecure person and you put yourself in situations where people are constantly going to pick on you and bully you, and I'm not saying it's your fault if you get picked on or bullied, but let's say if you put yourself out in the forefront and you put a camera on you and you walk around naked, there's going to be people who love it and there's going to be people who hate it. But that you're still going to get bullied in a situation, or you're going to get praised in a situation, but you're still participating in that. So therefore, that's the reality that you create. That's why I say when you have these moments of, aha, I see that I'm choosing to make the situation worse, or I could choose to make the situation better. Awakening to me is simply choosing to make something better when I know that it could go worse, or I know that I can't avoid the worst, so I have to just learn how to walk through the fire. You understand what I'm saying? That's the part of the awakening and spiritual journey that a lot of times we forget to apply to life because we're so focused on getting the answer right now. And what I had to learn is the answer is going to come to you when you're ready for it. But being aware and being in the process of awakening, you're more readily available to allow things to come in and allow them to, what we say, test us, right? The universe itself is not testing us, but life is testing us. I truly believe that. The universe is an entity that we all live, reside in, feed off of, water, earth, food, all these things. That's the living universe. This is something that we're just breathing off of, right? But when we realize that, okay, how I breathe, what I eat, what I drink, these things all affect my experience, that's how you start to then create your reality within your own universe. Does that make sense? So then when we talk about the awakening part of spirit, it's saying that I am choosing to allow my human flesh and my spiritual consciousness to walk the same path together. Because some people, they can choose the path of ego where they ignore their spiritual self, where they're like, I'm an artist, I want to be an artist, but the human body's like, no, you got to be a doctor because that makes the most money and that's the most practical and that's what you should do. So now your body is walking a path that it feels it should do, but your spirit and your consciousness are not there, and you don't want to. And this is when we start getting depressed and we don't feel like we're fitting in, or we're getting imposter syndrome, right? These things are because the soul and the body are not aligned. So the awakening is saying, I have two energies that I need to pay attention to at all times. The concept comes in when we talk about masculine and feminine energy. The masculine is the physical body. The feminine is the thought and the emotion and the things that are inserted by way of masculine action, masculine planning. Remember, masculine is just pushing something into place. May it be pushing a shovel into a foundation to dig it up, to make something be born, right? You got to dig a hole to plant something. So that's the physical part that goes into the womb to create from the feminine energy. So when we can recognize that this is a part of our journey that's necessary, then we start to recognize that the awakening part is going to be unavoidable. It's just a part of the journey. And so depending again on what you've said to yourself in your dreams, or what you've said to yourself in private, like, man, I'm so sick of this life, or man, I'm ready to start over, I want to do something new. The universe hears you and it says, okay, let's change up their reality. Let's introduce a new level, a new board game for them. And if you're prepared, because you've learned from all the other boards and journeys along the way, you'll recognize the new level and the new board that you're being introduced to, and you'll take it on in a willingly fun way. Again, everything in life is like a video game, and you just have to learn how to master each level. And as you master each level, you can choose to keep playing that same game, that theme, or you can jump to a new game and play that game, that theme, right? I think a lot of us think that we have to continue to play the game that we were handed to us. This is the script that was given to us by way of ancestor and family lineage, and say, this is who we are, this is how we talk, this is how we act, this is how we eat, blah, 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 blah. And then you say, okay, this is who I am, and then you condition yourself and believe this so much that your own consciousness abandons you. And it says, well, if I can't be who I need to be with you, then I'll go be that with someone else. You know, we say, like, I had an idea and then I saw somebody else implement it. That's the universe was trying to work through you as a vessel, because it knew that you had the lineage and the tools to utilize it. But because you put a block up and said, no, that's not my reality, it went to someone else. So when we can recognize that any part of our reality can be created or recreated when we choose it, then the awakening side continues to talk to us. Like, awakening to me is a voice that continually says, good job. Yes, that's what you're supposed to do. Nope, don't do that. You did that before. Remember what happened last time? You can do that if you want to again, but we've already learned that lesson. You're just going to have to learn it all over again. This is the part of awakening and spirituality that it can be an isolating journey, because most people aren't going to believe you. They're not going to care about what you're going through. They're going to say, oh, that's just life, or oh, you've been drinking out the wrong water, or whatever they want to say, right? People are going to always find a way to make you feel like what you're experiencing is not real if they haven't experienced it. And when you can say, I know exactly what I'm experiencing, without feeling like you're driving yourself mentally unstable, or you're spiritual bypassing, or you're just constantly fighting reality, that's the part of the awakening that it welcomes. That's the part where I said you're going to have a trigger, or you're going to have something that says you're not listening to what this journey is asking you to do. So if you're forcing yourself to continue down a path that you don't believe in, you're going to continue to experience things that you don't want to happen to you. That's why they say, when you think about something, be careful what you think about, because you will manifest it into this reality. So there are some things that happen out of our control. That's the part that's confusing. Two things can be true at once. I know that statement doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but two things can be true at once, where you can be the best foot soldier, the best human being, the best conscious being. You can be the nicest, kind, loving person, and then something tragic happens to you. That's the reality of existence. That's not the reality of consciousness. So when we can learn to separate the two and recognize that, yeah, I can exist in this reality, but my conscious being can create in this reality, eventually they will meet in the middle, and that's when we call it manifestation in the physical realm. Where if you write something down and you start putting in the physical action moves around it to make it happen, then one day you look up and it's built, it's done. And people are like, when did you do that? And you say, I just put in the work daily. I made sure that I consistently showed up for myself. I made sure that I continued to believe in myself even when others didn't. That's the whole point of when we're talking about planting a seed. You plant the seed and you walk away and let it grow. Of course you water it and you check in on it, but you don't keep digging it up to make sure that the roots are rooting. No, you plant it, put in the energy, put in the work, and then one day it sprouts out. And then you see the thing that you help create, that you help co-create with consciousness. So I hope this makes sense. But again, awakening is about the patterns. When you allow yourself to be open to seeing the patterns around you, then you're much more willing to be open to spirit speaking to you. And I don't mean like, again, a woo-woo way where, oh my gosh, I'm hearing all these divine voices. No, I mean, it's going to talk to you in your voice. Whatever voice you hear in your head. I know a lot of people say that they don't have internal dialogues. You do. What usually means, what I hear when I hear people say that is, you turned off either your emotions, so your human now only believes your thoughts, and the thoughts have now manifested in your beliefs, and your belief is that you don't hear voices. We all hear voices. Because if you're connected to your emotions, then you're going to know that I can feel something and still believe something totally different to that, right? If you feel it and believe it at the same time, that's where we talk about manifesting. That's the correlation between when you believe in something, you're feeding it, right? If you don't believe in it, you're not feeding it. So when you believe in something, your body and your mind are now both feeding into it, which is allowing particles to come together to materialize. When you don't believe in something, but you still have thoughts about it, in a weird way, it's like you call in this morphed type of mutation where it comes into your life, but now it's a distorted version of what you really wanted. And because you half believed it and you're getting a little taste of something you wanted, but it's not what you wanted, now you're become a cynic and you're like, I didn't want this. This is not what I asked for. But it's like, but it is. That's the part where people are like, I didn't ask for this life. You didn't ask for this life. But the reality that you participate in and perpetuate the beliefs into is what's going to continue to create what you're feeling and thinking. And so when we explore the spiritual awakening, we're talking about how it actually feels. We want to talk about how we're recognizing it and why it is the beginning of deep awareness, because when you allow yourself to feel, you genuinely allow yourself to heal. I'm not trying to make it rhyme, but it's true. I met a lot of people where they're like, they think and think and think, but they don't feel. Well, you don't feel anything about it, you're just doing it? Yeah. Okay, well, that's going to feel like work because you're constantly building something, but you're not putting any love into it, right? That's why I say when you have your emotions, may it be good, bad, or ugly, when you put emotions into it, it's giving it some type of source of energy to continue to get back to you. And so when we, again, talk about awakening as far as the spiritual concept goes, we're not talking just about, again, seeing repeated numbers over and over. We're not talking about, again, knowing how to talk to language of hippies, which, again, I don't mind hippies, but when you just like, oh, yes, peace and love and grand rising, and I've just prayed on my crystals. I believe in all of that. But I also believe in don't spiritual bypass the patterns, because life is a cycle of patterns. And when you can see the patterns, you recognize what cycle you're in. And then you're able to say, okay, I want to be here or I don't want to be here. So I know this was a kind of all over the place. I hope it makes sense. But remember, awakening is about conscious patterns. And those conscious patterns become little tidbits of how the environment talks to us. And when we choose to listen to those bits of information and put it together like a puzzle, we get the bigger picture. We get the mystery or the photo behind the pieces, right? Because when we're putting it together, We have a visual what it looks like, but we got to put all the pieces together to make sure that the vision matches what's on the box. So it's the same reality with our awakening when we walk into the spiritual realm. We want to take the little pieces of things that are happening and listening to us and trying to disrupt the old way of how we used to be and awaken us to the new way that we want to be. So when we can do this, then it's much easier for us to integrate that spiritual mindset into our everyday awakening. So this is the part of the journey that I hope people learn how to practice. It takes daily practice. It's not something that just, oh, I'm spiritually awake and now everything's just going to make sense. No, stuff becomes even more confusing, because then you're like, why do I know this but no one else wants to know this? Or why do I know this and all the people who do know this themselves, when we talk, people think that we sound off our rocker because we're vibrating. When we say vibrating, we are literally vibrating at a different being where we can see things that other people can't see. You ever been around somebody and you're like, you see that one person has an attitude, another person has an attitude, and you can see that something's about to pop off. But some people, because they're so unaware of their surroundings, they're like, oh, I don't see the problem. They seem fine to me. And then out of nowhere, they fighting. And you're like, how'd you know that's what happened? Because I read the energy. I read the room, right? When you know how to read past the physical or read past the tangible, and you can read the unknown and read what's right in front of you, then you start to become awakened to your own superpowers. So I hope that you guys enjoy this new series. Again, it's the ABCs of spirituality. The word of today was awakening. So I'm going to continue this series, and I'm just going to keep posting until we finish the alphabet. And I hope you play along and follow along. But I do want to give you some key takeaways. Before you walk away, I believe in journaling. So encourage yourself to start with a prompt. And one of the things you can say is, what is my soul trying to show me right now? That is the question. Anytime that something's being presented to you that you don't know why, or you're just having a moment in life where it's like, why does it feel so tough? Why is there so much resistance? Ask yourself, what is my soul trying to show me right now? And when you invite this energy in, it's going to start revealing to you how it talks to you. So you can say you're not going crazy, you're just waking up. Keep going, okay? Because I know a lot of times you feel like you're losing it on this journey because things just don't make sense. But if you stay aware and you ask questions and you go research, you'll find answers and things will start to make more sense. So again, thank you for checking out this video. You can check out my website as well. I have some resources there, my blog posts, some of the books that I've created. So I have a little bit of everything on my website, but my focus is always going to be on teaching others about their spiritual selves. So thank you again for joining me on this journey along the spiritual journey, and I will talk to you guys soon. Thank you.